President Barack Obama unveiled his proposals to help curb gun violence. President Obama's address comes 1 month after the mass shooting in Newtown, Connecticut that killed 20 elementary school children. The president's plan calls on Congress to ban military assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. In addition, loopholes in the gun sale background check systems would be closed. Immediately following the address, Obama signed 23 executive orders, which require no congressional approval. The executive orders will improve access to data for background checks, including measures to encourage schools to hire police officers, increase research on gun violence, and improve efforts to prosecute gun crimes. Also, a presidential memorandum will instruct the Centers for Disease Control to research causes and prevention of gun violence and is seeking rules to ensure that law enforcement conducts background checks before returning seized firearms.
As important as these steps are, they are in no way a substitute for action from members of Congress. To make a real and lasting difference, Congress too must act. And Congress must act soon. And I'm calling on Congress to pass some very specific proposals right away.
And I'm joined now by our man in Washington, D.C., Chris Castile. And thanks so much for joining us here today, Chris.
You bet, Dave.
Chris, can you give us an idea of how the president's proposals were received?
Well, it's been, quite varied. I mean, you did a good job of listing all the various components of the thing, and you've had, kind of overall response on Capitol Hill. Mostly partisan, as could be predicted, with Republicans saying it threatens Second Amendment rights, Democrats saying, it's long overdue. But there's so many components like the ones you mentioned. I mean, I saw a statement from the ACLU worried about there being too many police officers in schools. I saw a press release from a behavioral healthcare group applauding the proposal to teach, have teachers take training in spotting mental illness in young people. And, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, which lobbies against gun restrictions, was fairly muted in its response. It basically said, this isn't really going to do anything. So it kind of ran the gamut, really, as expected.
I'm sure there has been a lot of reaction, a lot of people weighing in, and it was a busy day for you, as could be expected when a story like this breaks. So what has been the reaction from the Oklahoma congressional delegates?
Well, mostly opposed, at least on the proposals regarding, some semi-automatic weapons, what are sometimes referred to as military-style assault weapons. I mean, it's an all-Republican delegation, a delegation that's pretty adamantly defensive of the Second Amendment, and but there've also been both of the senators, Senator Tom Coburn and Jim Inhofe, said they were open to some of the executive actions. They didn't see those as intrusive on constitutional rights. So, what Senator Coburn said is that that they need to get this legislation. They need to, if they're going to talk about this stuff, they should get it on the floor of the Senate, debate it, allow senators to talk about it, amend it, and just let the legislative process work through. Of course, the Senate's controlled by Democrats, and any kind of legislation like this would have a better chance over there. The senator from California, Dianne Feinstein, has said that she will introduce a new ban on some assault weapons and magazine clips. She was the author of the 1994 ban on some semi-automatic weapons, those so-called assault weapons that expired in 2004. So we'll see. I mean, may make for some good theater on Capitol Hill in the coming months.
I'm sure it will, and you'll be there to cover it. Chris Castile joining us today via Skype from our partners at the Washington Examiner. And Chris, while we do not currently have any Democratic representatives in Washington, the issue has been a touchy issue for Democrats from our state in the past, right?
That's absolutely right. And as you said, there are no Democrats anymore. The last Democrat was Dan Boren, who retired just this past year, Dan Boren from Muskogee. And Dan Boren, the Democrat, was a member of the board of the National Rifle Association. But, for people who've only been watching Oklahoma politics for the last 10 or 15 years, I mean, they would be absolutely amazed probably to know that back in 1994, when that semi-automatic, that assault weapon ban was approved in Bill Clinton's first term, we had 3 Oklahoma Democrats who voted for it. One was David Boren. He's now the president of OU. He was a senator then, and he was retiring that year. But we also had 2 representatives, Mike Sinar and Dave McCurdy, who had also voted for the waiting period for handguns, the so-called Brady bill. Well, that was a big issue. Both of those things, the assault weapons ban and the Brady bill, were big issues in that 1994 election in Oklahoma when both of those Democrats were beat, McCurdy and Sinar. And around the country it was for Democrats. This is a very touchy issue for a lot of Democrats in some parts of the country, particularly west of the Mississippi. And there's even the majority leader of the Senate, Harry Reid from Nevada, has been against an assault weapons ban. And even when you had the Democrats in control of Congress in the first couple of years of President Obama's term, there were no gun control proposals that made it to the floor of the House or Senate in that 2 years. And so I think that demonstrates, really just how touchy an issue this is for both parties, really.
There you have it, some depth and context from our man in Washington, Chris Castile. Chris, thanks so much for the knowledge and your time today.
Absolutely, Dave.
We mentioned President Obama gave the address earlier today. You can watch that in its entirety on newsok.com, and of course more analysis and coverage from Washington from Chris Castile in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com every day.